Prince William and Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, are rumored to be clashing, and insiders say this isn't just another royal misunderstanding. It's a story that no one saw coming. For Princess Anne, this rift cuts deeper than most could imagine. Known as one of the most loyal and grounded members of the royal family, she's carried years of responsibility, public pressure, and personal challenges with unmatched strength. But this time, something inside her seems to have finally reached its limit. A private decision made behind palace doors has left her shaken, with whispers of tension spreading fast. Those close to the family talk about a confidential meeting that turned emotional, leaving Anne feeling blindsided and deeply hurt. Now royal watchers everywhere are asking the same question: what could have happened between Princess Anne and the man she once supported so strongly? The moment that stunned Buckingham Palace began on what seemed like an ordinary morning. The palace was quiet, the air still calm, when a confidential message suddenly landed at the press office. Within minutes, the royal communications team was on high alert. But this wasn't a simple announcement or another royal engagement update. This was something much bigger. The news raced through palace corridors, reaching every corner of the monarchy, and all eyes turned to Princess Anne. Reporters started piecing together clues when royal correspondents received a mysterious briefing stamped urgent. Phones began ringing non-stop. Whispers filled the press rooms, and before long, the entire media world was in a frenzy. Something serious was happening behind those golden palace gates, and everyone wanted answers. Headlines lit up across the UK. Something big had gone down, something serious enough to make Princess Anne, usually the calmest and most composed royal, step out of the spotlight. But what could possibly shake the Princess Royal, a woman known for her unbreakable discipline and lifelong devotion to duty, to the point where she reportedly said, "I cannot forgive him for this." That single line sent shockwaves through the kingdom. For decades, Princess Anne has been the solid heartbeat of the monarchy. While others struggled with pressure, she stayed steady through every public storm. Family issues, divorces, and royal drama. She never asked for sympathy or attention, just kept working, showing up day after day with quiet strength and class that even her siblings admired. But now something had clearly changed. The woman who once said she didn't need recognition to serve her country was facing something deeply personal, and it hurt. Those inside the palace described that day's atmosphere as heavy, tense, and painfully quiet. Staff members who had been around for over 30 years admitted they had never seen Princess Anne so withdrawn. They didn't see anger in her face, they saw heartbreak, a silent kind of sadness that only comes when someone you deeply trust lets you down. People started to ask, was it a disagreement about royal responsibilities, a personal misunderstanding, or something closer to home, touching the heart of family loyalty itself? By midday, every newsroom in the country was scrambling to find out the truth. Then came the palace's official response, short, carefully phrased, and cautious as ever. It stated that the matter was of a personal and private nature. But to royal followers, those few words said more than enough. The situation hinted at deep emotions hidden behind the polished mask of royal duty. Later that evening, cameras caught Princess Anne leaving Windsor, calm, composed, and unreadable as ever. She didn't say a single word, but her silence spoke volumes. Something inside her had clearly shifted. Commentators across the nation began to speculate. What could possibly have pushed a strong and loyal woman to a point where forgiveness felt impossible? What could her brother, the king, have done to cause such a reaction? In a family where unity and tradition are everything, cracks like this this are rare, and when they happen, they shake the whole royal foundation. Right now, the public is left wondering what truly lies behind those palace walls. The Queen's only daughter, long seen as the symbol of royal strength, may be facing one of the hardest moments of her life. And this time, her unwavering sense of duty might not be enough to mend the pain. From the very beginning, Princess Anne earned the title the Princess of Duty. Since birth, she carried herself with purpose, standing apart from everyone else in the royal circle. As the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, she was born into responsibility, yet she never chased the spotlight. Even as a child, her discipline and composure mirrored her father's strong will and her mother's quiet endurance. She didn't need fame to prove her worth. Her actions spoke louder than words. While others sometimes crumbled under royal expectations, Anne thrived. As she grew older, her focus and strength became her signature. By 18, she was already representing the crown at official events, showing the world that she was built for a life of service and commitment. By her early 20s, she had already built a solid reputation as one of the most hard-working royals in the entire family. Year after year, she showed up, logging more official engagements than many of her siblings put together. While others made headlines for glitz and attention, Anne's name was tied to consistency, effort, and discipline. No drama, just pure dedication. She once said that service wasn't about fame, but about responsibility, and she truly lived by those words. The public came to respect her independence. Unlike many who leaned into royal privilege, Anne often drove herself to her own events. No chauffeurs, no fuss. She was even known to skip heavy security at times and chose not to give her children royal titles so they could live more grounded lives. That move earned her huge respect from people who saw her as genuine and down to earth. She followed a personal code that not everyone could relate to, but everyone admired. To her, duty wasn't just a word. It was sacred. It was the reason she faced every morning with focus and quiet determination. As decades passed and the monarchy faced waves of change and public criticism, Anne stood steady. She became the anchor, representing balance and strength when others struggled. Whether she was attending official state visits, charity galas, or horse riding competitions, she handled every event with the same level of effort and precision. And no matter who she met, from global leaders to everyday workers, she treated them all with the same respect and warmth. Behind her no-nonsense attitude, those close to her knew she carried a huge heart. She spent countless hours supporting causes close to her soul, especially her longtime work with Save the Children, where she became one of the organization's most dedicated and active supporters. Princess Anne's non-stop humanitarian work took her across the world, meeting people from all walks of life and offering comfort wherever she went. Guided by experience, empathy, and a quiet sense of faith, she became a symbol of royal service at its purest form. To many, she was the definition of commitment, steady, focused, and unshakable. Even those who weren't her biggest fans admitted that no one lived by the motto, duty before self, quite like she did. Yet, beneath all that strength and composure, Anne was still human. A daughter, a sister, a mother. Someone who felt every emotion deeply. Even when she rarely showed it, her life of duty had taught her to handle storms with grace. But this new situation would challenge even her legendary calm. Family ties, long-standing loyalties, and unspoken tensions were suddenly being tested in ways no one saw coming. For most of her life, Princess Anne has been the royal family's solid foundation, the one who stayed firm when others wavered. She's the sibling known for holding everything together when things got complicated behind palace walls. Her presence was quiet but powerful, her understanding of the royal system unmatched. She lived by its code. even when that meant keeping silent, showing restraint, or putting personal feelings aside for the bigger picture. But the royal family, despite its crown and traditions, is still a family, with its share of tension, misunderstandings, and emotional distance. Anne's connection with her brother, King Charles III, has always been one of deep care mixed with a touch of sibling rivalry. Born less than 2 years apart, they grew up side by side. A childhood of privilege, but also one filled with enormous expectations. Charles was thoughtful and introspective, while Anne was bold and practical. He found peace in art and reflection, and she found hers in horses and the open air. Both Princess Anne and King Charles III were molded by one thing: duty. From childhood, they were taught that protecting the monarchy was their lifelong mission. As adults, that same sense of duty often pulled them together, but at times it also created tension. While Charles carried the weight of future kingship long before he wore the crown, Anne went her own way, carving out her identity as one of the hardest-working royals. She believed in action over image, service over show. When Charles started pushing to modernize the monarchy, Anne often viewed his choices with quiet doubt. She respected him deeply as her brother and as king, but she also carried decades of first-hand experience that made her value consistency and tradition. Her relationship with her children, Peter Phillips and Zara Tindall, showed that same sense of balance and pride. She made a bold move by choosing not to give them royal titles, wanting them to grow up grounded, living real lives while still honoring their royal heritage. It was a strong statement, showing that integrity and character mattered more than titles or privilege. Still, even with her close-knit family and sense of independence, Anne couldn't fully escape the complicated world of palace politics. Rumors began swirling about quiet disagreements over the monarchy's future direction. Some insiders spoke of behind-the-scenes debates about who should appear where, which causes deserved focus, and how public duties should evolve. Those who've seen the inner workings said the atmosphere sometimes shifted. Subtle power moves, polite disagreements, and a clash of visions. While Charles pushed for modernization and new approaches, Anne believed that royal duty wasn't something to reinvent, it was something sacred to preserve. In private meetings, people remember her as the one who spoke with reason, reminding everyone that tradition connects the crown to its people. Slowly, key royal appointments and major family choices started happening without Anne's full input, and that's when things began to shift. The stage was quietly being set for tension that no one could brush aside. Those close to her noticed small moments of withdrawal, not rebellion, but disappointment that ran deep. It's said that Anne felt pushed aside, her advice praised in public, yet quietly dismissed behind closed doors. For someone who had given her whole life to service, being left out like that must have cut deeper than words could ever express. Even with all the rumors and behind-the-scenes whispers, Anne didn't let it show in public. She kept that same calm, composed expression she was known for. The cameras caught her smiling, attending royal events, and speaking with her usual measured grace. But sharp-eyed watchers began noticing small shifts, fewer joint appearances with her brother, more solo outings, and a certain chill in her interactions with the senior royals. Something had clearly changed. Inside the palace, those closest to the family quietly spoke of a growing emotional gap between the two siblings who once stood shoulder to shoulder through every royal challenge. This wasn't about a single disagreement or a big public fallout. It was more subtle than that. It was the slow fading of trust, built up from tiny moments and unspoken frustrations that over time became impossible to ignore. Princess Anne, long seen as the royal family's rock, now found herself torn between two powerful forces: her loyalty to the crown and her love for her brother. As the palace braced for a major decision that could test their bond like never before, Anne stood at crossroads. Then came the breaking point, a moment that arrived quietly but hit the palace like thunder. The news moved through the hushed halls of Buckingham Palace long before the public even caught a whisper of it. It was a decision made directly by King Charles himself, one that would shake up long-standing family roles and completely shift the balance of royal responsibilities. When Anne received the news, those present described a rare, heavy silence. She didn't argue, she didn't react, she just listened, nodded once. But behind that calm, something inside her seemed to shatter. For decades, Anne had poured her entire life into service. No drama, no demands, no chasing the spotlight, just steady dedication. To her, duty wasn't just a job, it was sacred, something she had inherited, lived by, and sworn to uphold. But this decision struck straight at the core of everything she stood for. It involved a new plan to redistribute certain royal responsibilities, a plan made and finalized without her input or even her awareness. Roles and duties she had faithfully handled for over 40 years were suddenly being reassigned under the goal of streamlining the monarchy. And while Anne never cared about status or titles, the way it happened left her deeply hurt. For her, respect within the royal family had always been built on loyalty and honesty. To discover such a major change through advisors instead of directly from her brother, that felt like a personal blow. After all, she had stood by Charles through years of public pressure, defended his choices, and supported his leadership even when others didn't. But this quiet exclusion, this lack of conversation, stung in a way that no public criticism could ever express. People who were there remember that after the meeting, Princess Anne quietly returned to her private residence at Gatcombe Park and unexpectedly cleared her entire evening schedule. The Princess Royal, famous for her discipline, punctuality, and ironclad work ethic, had suddenly stepped back from view. Friends later said she seemed calm on the outside, but deeply reflective, carrying a kind of pain she rarely allowed anyone to see. For someone who almost never let emotions show, it was clear that something inside her had changed. It didn't take long for the media to notice her absence. When she missed a scheduled royal event, headlines exploded across the country. Commentators pointed out how unusual her silence was. This was the same woman who never backed out of an engagement, no matter the weather or the pressure. Her sudden quiet retreat became the topic of every major news outlet. Reports soon started hinting at tension between the king and his sister over how the monarchy should move forward. According to palace insiders, Anne wasn't just disappointed, she was hurt on a deeper level. Her loyalty, once rock solid and beyond question, had been taken for granted. After serving the crown longer than anyone else in the family, standing firm through decades of change, challenge, and public judgment, she now felt sidelined in decisions that directly shaped her role. To her, this wasn't about losing responsibility, it was about losing trust. Still, Princess Anne refused to let emotion take over in public. When she finally reappeared days later at a charity event, she carried herself with her usual poise, calm voice, steady steps, polite smiles. It was the look of a woman carrying silent pain, tested by time, and quietly hurt by those she trusted most. For the first time in decades, Princess Anne let her guard slip during a private conversation, and her words would soon ripple far beyond palace walls. "I cannot forgive him for this." She didn't say it with anger. It came out soft, heavy with sorrow. A statement born from disappointment, not defiance. In that moment, the royal family's most unshakable figure faced something she had never experienced before: heartbreak from within her own circle. Princess Anne, who had weathered decades of royal pressure with grace and composure, now carried a pain that couldn't be seen but could be felt. It wasn't the kind of wound that came from public attention or rumors. This one was personal, deep, and private. The crown may have continued to shine brightly before the cameras, but behind those palace gates, something had quietly fractured. Through every storm that the monarchy had endured, Princess Anne had been the anchor holding it steady. When her brother faced waves of criticism as Prince of Wales, Anne never turned her back. She didn't speak out, didn't seek sympathy. She stood firmly beside him, the calm presence in the chaos. Even when the royal image wavered under pressure, she never added to the noise. She kept her focus, never contradicted him in public, and made sure disagreements stayed within the family, never spilling into headlines. Her loyalty was never loud or dramatic. It was quiet, constant, and unbreakable. It was the kind of loyalty that keeps a royal family standing when pride and politics start to pull it apart. Despite their differences in personality, Anne's bond with Charles had always been one of deep affection and understanding. Their tempers and styles may have clashed, but their shared devotion to duty held them together. Anne admired her brother's intellect, his vision for a more modern monarchy, and his respect for their late mother's legacy. But for the first time, that bond, built over a lifetime of service, trust, and shared responsibility, seemed fragile. King Charles always had deep respect for Princess Anne's unmatched work ethic and discipline. Her service record was spotless, her sense of duty unshakable. Sure, they had their disagreements over the years, but underneath every private discussion was a bond only siblings who grew up under the world's spotlight could understand. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away, that bond appeared stronger than ever. Millions watched as Princess Anne walked behind her mother's coffin, her face calm yet full of emotion, her presence a symbol of strength and grace. The image touched hearts around the world. Anne personally accompanied her mother's body from Balmoral to London, a deeply moving gesture of love and respect that brought people to tears. The moment was so powerful that King Charles publicly thanked her sister for her extraordinary service and devotion. But behind that public show of unity, quiet cracks were starting to form. As the new royal structure began to take shape, decisions about redistributing roles and duties started causing unease. Anne's insights, once valued and sought after, were being asked for less and less. Meetings went ahead without her input, and gradually her voice began to lose influence within the new order of the monarchy. For someone who had given her entire life to service, this quiet sidelining hurt deeply. Still, true to her principles, Anne refused to let any personal disappointment affect her public role. She continued working tirelessly across the United Kingdom and abroad, attending engagements, supporting charities, and representing the crown with the same steady professionalism she'd shown for decades. Every appearance, every formal smile, and every graceful gesture still reflected her devotion to her brother, to the monarchy, and to the duty she held sacred. Yet deep inside, something was shifting. Her loyalty, once strong and unquestioned, was beginning to feel one-sided. Princess Anne, the royal family's anchor through countless challenges, had always stood by her brother. Princess Anne had stood by her brother through it all. The challenges of his marriage to Princess Diana, the endless speculation about Camilla, and the long, careful rebuilding of his public image. Through every storm, she defended his choices and carried herself with quiet dignity, even when public opinion turned harsh. But now, being left out of decisions that directly shaped her decades of service wasn't just a slight, it was painful on a personal level. Those close to Anne revealed that she found it difficult to balance her private emotions with her royal duties. It wasn't about pride, it was about trust. Forgiveness didn't come easily, not because she wanted to hold on to anger, but because the hurt had come from the very place she felt most secure, her own family. For someone whose strength had always been built on loyalty and honesty, that kind of wound couldn't heal overnight. Even as she continued to fulfill her public role with her usual grace, her silence began to say more than words ever could. The polite smiles stayed in place, but the warmth behind them seemed to fade. Royal watchers noticed a subtle distance. The bond that had held strong for over 50 years was now under real strain. The world still saw a sister walking beside her brother at royal events, but behind that composed image, questions lingered. Could the loyalty that had defined her entire life survive the disappointment shadowing it behind palace doors? Inside Buckingham Palace, life has always been a careful balance of ritual and restraint. Every marble hallway and gold-trimmed room speaks of tradition and majesty. But beyond those grand surfaces lies a quieter world, one of whispered conversations, careful glances, and decisions that carry the weight of generations. Behind the royal polish, emotions run deep, and trust, once shaken, can take a lifetime to rebuild. For Princess Anne, palace life had always been defined by structure, discipline, and a sense of order. It was a world she understood completely, steady, familiar, and rooted in purpose. But after the recent events that left her quietly shaken, even the grand corridors of Buckingham Palace seemed different. The marble floors felt colder, the silence heavier, as if the very heart of the monarchy had lost some of its warmth. In royal circles, silence can speak louder than any speech. Every glance, every pause, every private meeting behind closed doors carries meaning. And for those who've served the royal family for decades, reading unspoken emotions is almost second nature. After the king's unexpected decision, that silence turned almost physical, thick enough to feel. Courtiers began to sense a distance between the siblings. A new layer of formality had replaced the natural comfort that once flowed easily between them. Conversations were polite, but the warmth that once made their bond feel unbreakable had started to fade. Anne's private office at Buckingham Palace remained her personal haven, precise, organized, and full of purpose. Her desk, as always, was neatly covered with briefing folders, handwritten letters, and documents from the countless charities that relied on her support. But those closest to her noticed something subtle, a quiet change in her energy. She was still focused and professional, yet there were moments when her eyes lingered on the portraits of her late parents hanging just above her desk, their faces a reminder of everything she had been taught. Duty first, emotion second. That guiding principle had carried her through a lifetime of service. But now, for the first time, that balance felt uncertain. The palace hierarchy was shifting, and with it came questions about loyalty, tradition, and trust. In those elegant gold-trimmed rooms, senior aides walked a careful line, navigating what could be spoken aloud and what needed to stay unmentioned. The growing tension between King Charles and Princess Anne was handled with the utmost care, as if the slightest misstep could shake the royal image. Public unity had to remain spotless, no matter what quiet disagreements lingered beneath the surface. Every smile in front of the cameras had to look sincere. Every handshake had to seem effortless. Each photograph became a message, proof that the royal family was as united as ever. But behind the glitter of chandeliers and royal formality, the truth told a quieter, more fragile story, one that no amount of protocol could hide. At formal dinners, Princess Anne stayed perfectly composed. She spoke politely when spoken to, answered every question with grace, and contributed just enough to maintain appearances. But those who knew her best could sense the change. She wasn't angry, she was distant, reflective, and maybe even quietly hurt. Anne had never been one for emotional displays, but now her restraint carried a heaviness that everyone around her could feel. It was as if she had built invisible walls, not to shut people out, but to protect her pride and her peace. Meanwhile, the king continued moving forward with his vision for a leaner, more modern monarchy, practical in approach, but emotionally costly. For Anne, that shift wasn't about titles or duties, it was about being seen, about respect. The emotional toll it took on her could never be measured in headlines or royal schedules. The once easy conversations between brother and sister had become short and strictly businesslike. The shared laughs and quiet moments of sibling understanding that once defined them were now memories. Inside the palace, everyone felt the change. The atmosphere had grown cautious, fragile, and tense. One wrong word or public misstep could undo decades of carefully built reputation. Silence became the safest shield. Letters were exchanged, schedules coordinated, and every public appearance was planned with precision. But beneath that polished surface, the palace no longer felt like a home of tradition. It felt like a house of quiet secrets. For Princess Anne, loyalty had slowly transformed into endurance. To protect the monarchy and the legacy her parents built, she chose to keep serving with her usual quiet focus and strength. Beneath Princess Anne's calm and perfectly composed exterior, the quiet sting of disappointment still lingered. Unspoken, but undeniable. Inside the grand halls of the palace, she carried two heavy weights at once: her unwavering crown of duty and the private ache of a heart quietly bruised by the choices made in the name of royal order. It had become a silent battle, public strength versus private emotion. To the outside world, everything looked flawless. The cameras showed Princess Anne standing beside her brother during formal ceremonies, her posture straight, her expression measured, every movement deliberate and precise. To most people watching, nothing seemed out of place. The royal family still looked united, their composure unshaken, their gestures smooth and synchronized in the familiar rhythm of royal life. But to those paying attention, the truth hid in the subtle moments, the extra space between them at events, the lack of shared smiles, and the silence where there once was quiet laughter. It didn't take long for the British press to start picking up on it. Veteran royal correspondents who had followed the family for decades began whispering about a noticeable change in Princess Anne's demeanor. They noted her unusual quietness during public appearances, her early departures from certain gatherings, and her absence from a few key royal events. Something, they said, had shifted beneath the surface. Still, the palace stayed firm and professional. When asked, insiders declined to comment, repeating the official line that the relationship between the king and his sister remained warm and supportive. But behind those carefully chosen words, the air inside Buckingham Palace told a different story. The bond that had once stood as a symbol of unity and shared history between King Charles and Princess Anne now softened into something far more restrained, polite, distant, and carefully managed. Newspapers began publishing opinion pieces praising Anne's professionalism, discipline, and unmatched dedication. She was hailed as the backbone of the royal family, a woman of quiet strength who embodied the very spirit of service. But ironically, those glowing words, meant to celebrate her, also revealed something bittersweet: her isolation. Behind all the admiration and respect, there was a quieter truth that few dared to speak. Princess Anne was standing alone. She carried herself with the same dignity she always had, but this time it came with an invisible weight. In the polished and precise world of royalty, appearances mean everything. Yet even the brightest smile can't fully hide the heaviness behind the eyes. The public saw resilience, grace, and composure. Behind closed doors, there was quiet sorrow, the emotional cost of loyalty. For Anne, who had devoted her life to service, the lesson was clear and painful. Dedication can sometimes demand more than it gives back. The woman behind the royal title, beneath the crown, beyond the centuries of tradition, was still human, with the same emotions, disappointments, and hopes as anyone else. Yet her strength had never come from her position or privilege. It came from within, from her sense of discipline, her grounded nature, and her unwavering purpose. Though born into luxury, Princess Anne has never lived like someone chasing comfort or glamour. Her strength comes not from speeches or grand displays, but from consistency, the quiet rhythm of work that has defined her for more than 50 years. When the cameras switch off and the palace lights fade, she returns to what grounds her most: early mornings at Gatcombe Park, tending to her horses, managing her estate, and maintaining her daily routine with precision. That sense of discipline, a gift passed down from her father, has carried Princess Anne through every storm, from public challenges to private heartache. Even now, as she quietly faces the emotional distance between herself and her brother, her composure never wavers. The pain hasn't disappeared, but it has shaped her, giving her strength instead of bitterness. In her moments of reflection, she often draws back to the lessons her mother once taught her, lessons about endurance, grace, and the power of patience. Those values have become her foundation, reminding her that true leadership sometimes means finding a way to forgive even when it feels impossible. Her children, Zara and Peter, remain her greatest source of pride and comfort. They admire her resilience, her calm strength, and her ability to rise above emotion while still leading with compassion. To them, she isn't just a royal figure, she's their mother, their guide, and a living example of quiet courage. In a world full of headlines and constant attention, she represents a different kind of power: steady, thoughtful, and rooted in integrity. As she moves through the later years of her public life, Princess Anne stands as one of the last true symbols of the old royal spirit: dignified, reserved, and deeply loyal. Behind the formal title and centuries of tradition, she remains a woman who has given her heart to service and her soul to duty. Her story isn't one of defeat or weakness, it's one of remarkable grace. Even through heartbreak, she continues to prove that dedication can outshine pain, and that strength doesn't always need to be loud to be powerful. While the royal family steps into a new chapter under King Charles's leadership, the emotional echoes of recent events still linger quietly behind palace walls. But Princess Anne, as always, stays true to her role. She keeps moving forward, attending events, meeting with charities, shaking hands, and fulfilling every commitment with the same unwavering focus that has defined her for decades. There's now a quiet distance surrounding Princess Anne, a calmness that feels less like peace and more like armor. The royal family itself is shifting, adapting to a new chapter under King Charles. His vision of a streamlined, modern monarchy continues to move ahead, trying to blend tradition with today's expectations. Every public appearance is carefully planned, every photograph measured, every word chosen with precision. The image of unity must stay intact, yet even within that picture-perfect frame, an unspoken truth still lingers. The monarchy's strength comes not only from ceremony and crowns, but from the very human hearts of those who carry its weight. For Princess Anne, the future isn't about titles, power, or visibility. It's about legacy. Her devotion has always been to service, not status. And while the distance between her and her brother may still quietly remain, she continues to fulfill her duties with unwavering dignity. Her silence itself has become powerful, a symbol of restraint, respect, and quiet strength. It's her way of reminding the world that true grace doesn't need to be loud to be lasting, and that dignity can survive even when trust has been tested. In the evenings, Anne often retreats to the gardens at her estate. Surrounded by the calm of open fields and the familiar sounds of her horses, she finds peace in reflection. Her thoughts wander through the decades, the years of service, the countless events, the sacrifices that defined her journey. She remembers moments of triumph and quiet victories, the kind that don't make headlines but shape character. The soft rustle of the trees and the echoes of history in the palace walls seem to remind her who she is and what she stands for. Those who've had the privilege to visit her describe her presence as steady and grounding, commanding yet kind, warm yet touched by something unspoken. There's a gentle strength about her, the kind that comforts others while still carrying its own quiet sorrow. Her private life has become her sanctuary, a space where reflection and healing can finally coexist. And though time has tested her bond with her brother, it has not destroyed it. There is still hope, a hope rooted in shared history, mutual respect, and the understanding that the royal family has weathered far greater storms. Maybe forgiveness, if it ever comes, won't arrive through words, but through shared purpose and renewed duty. For now, Princess Anne stands slightly apart from the spotlight, yet remains unshaken in her strength. In the ongoing story of the modern monarchy, she is that steady light that refuses to dim. Her heart has been tested, her loyalty questioned, but her sense of purpose still stands firm. As the royal family looks towards the future, it does so built upon the foundation of one woman's unwavering grace, courage, and lifelong devotion, a devotion far bigger than herself. Behind the crowns, ceremonies, and history lies something far more human, a story not about power or titles, but about emotion, endurance, and resilience. Princess Anne's journey reminds us that even those born into duty are still human at heart, capable of feeling disappointment, hurt, and quiet reflection. Yet through every test, she continues to embody what true strength looks like: calm under pressure, loyal without condition, and graceful even in silence. Her silence is not emptiness, it's her message. Her service is her legacy. Though the public may never know every word exchanged or every tear shed, one truth shines through it all. Princess Anne continues to move with the same dignity and focus that have defined her from the very beginning. In a world that's constantly changing, she remains the royal family's constant, the living reminder that duty and honor can still outlast pain and politics. As the monarchy steps into a new era, her steadfast spirit stands as a guiding light, a symbol of strength that reminds everyone watching that even when loyalty is tested and relationships are strained, integrity and purpose never fade. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about Princess Anne's quiet strength and the future of the royal family? And don't go anywhere. Click the next video on your screen to keep following the unfolding story of the royals.